Good afternoon, welcome to the UK Column News. It is the 15th of October 2014 and it's just gone 1 o'clock. Myself, Louise Collins, Brian Gerrish and Nick are here in Plymouth on a horrible, miserable, rainy day. I don't know what it's like the rest of the country. Do you?
Not really interested. We're suffering, so you guys might as well.
Okay.
I'll be told off for that. Can I just say to Kevin in South Wales, I haven't forgotten you. We'll be in touch shortly. Are we really going to start with this man?
I know, it's horrible.
Here we go.
He hasn't been assassinated yet, but he is calling for a global drive to teach respect for other religions. He said it was foolish to spend billions on a military fight with Islamic extremists and that it's of urgent global importance that schools should teach the virtue of religious respect. All this can be found in an article that he wrote for the BBC News Knowledge Economy. And I just want to finish this story by giving you a quote from his article, which I think Brian can bring up now. And he says, all the security measures and all the fighting will count for nothing unless the intolerant ideas that feed into extremist violence were challenged. Well, it's a shame you weren't challenged, Mr. Blair.
Well, the man who created it.
Exactly.
So he creates the problem and then he stands up. Of course, if we look at his spiritual, religious values, his main aim at the moment is to get more and more wealthy, collect those houses, collect the millions. But, start the violence and then stand up on a world stage.
Just put that picture on just to remind him of what he is like, if we can get it back. There you go. There he is. The warmonger himself, telling people that all fighting won't count for anything. It's just rich.
Well, the other bit is, of course, that aside from his foundation, he's a big man standing up with Nicky Gumbel from the Alpha Course, which, as far as I'm personally concerned, is common purpose for churches. So we've had big photographs of Tony Blair cuddling Nicky Gumbel after giving a talk to a very big Alpha Course event in London. So if you want a man responsible for the deaths of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, Blair's your man. Get him into your church, put him on a pedestal and get him to tell you how to love other people.
Exactly. It says you in your pink shirt.
Well, this is true. Well, this is going on behind the scenes. A very, very interesting article in the Mail about chemical weapons in Iraq. And what it's essentially saying there, of course, is that US troops did find chemical weapons, but it was all kept quiet because there were some embarrassing facts associated with these. Please do read this article because you have to read it carefully. Meanings change during the text, so they state categorically that chemical weapons were found. They talk about sarin gas and they talk about mustard gas, and then later on there is a single line which said, well, actually the overwhelming majority of the weapons were mustard gas. Well, of course, that is not a weapon of mass destruction. It's got a relatively limited kill zone on the battlefield, to use that unpleasant term. So most of them were mustard gas. And then the embarrassing fact for the Americans was that these had all been created back in the 1980s. And who had helped create these? Oh dear, it just happened to be the American defence industry.
Incredible.
So because the weapons didn't fit the requirement to talk about chemical weapons, weapons of mass destruction, George W. Bush just made sure that that little report was dropped. So think about those facts emerging over chemical weapons in Iraq, and consider the story we have consistently been told over weapons of mass destruction, chemical weapons in Syria. And of course, we've seen the British government and indeed Brooks Newmarks pushing for an assault on Syria and President Assad on the basis of these chemical weapons. To date, we have certainly not seen any irrefutable proof that it was Assad that used these weapons. If anybody out there is sitting on a report which proves that was the case, we'd be delighted if you direct us to it.
Exactly.
So lies, spin and propaganda in order to get more violence in countries overseas, so that Tony Blair can stand on a world stage and lecture us on how we need to be suitably tolerant in our religions. Well, the next scare, of course, is Ebola. And the Telegraph here has got a very interesting article. If you watch or go to see this online, you can click on the video. And here the captain, I think it's Captain Eagle from RFA, Royal Fleet Auxiliary Argus, talking about what he's going to be doing on his departure to Sierra Leone. And you can actually hear and see part of the briefings on board the ship as to the dangers of Ebola and how they're going to protect the sailors and the Royal Marines who are going to be put ashore.
How do you think the guys on the ship, the crew, are going to be feeling about being taken over there for this crisis?
Well, it's one of the reasons to have a look at this online, Lou,
right,
because you can see in quite a large space on board the ship members of the crew sitting for this briefing, and you look at their faces and they just have a particular look, which I'm going to say from my own service days I know, and it's almost like, what is this? You can almost read that these guys are saying, what exactly is going on here? So there's a lady in civilian clothes briefing. I read the article reasonably quickly, but I couldn't see her named or identified. So is she a government medical advisor? I don't know. Or we've simply got a lady in plain clothes, as it's known in service jargon, briefing on Ebola. If we can bring that one up on screen again, Nick. This is the interesting thing that, of course, Philip Hammond, Defence Secretary here, is, Foreign Secretary, beg your pardon, is making some statements. So the decision to send RFA Argus to one of the worst hit of the African countries comes as he declared Ebola, let's see what he says, an unprecedented threat that knows no borders. So he's being unbelievably cutting there. This is incredibly dangerous. It knows no borders. But then this is what he goes on to say. We have to get ahead of this disease, but if we get ahead of it, if we rise to the challenge, we can contain it and beat it. We know how to do this. It's not complicated to do. It just requires a large focus of resource and effort to deliver it. So it's an unprecedented threat that knows no borders, but it's not actually complicated. And we're sending a warship with 70 Land Rovers and 600 troops, and we're apparently going to, it's all solved.
It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, they are really, really hyping up this to put fear amongst everyone, obviously, clearly to boost this vaccine programme that's going to come about very soon.
Well, something's going on, and we just added this bit here. So this is it. We've got this unprecedented threat, knows no borders, but we can contain and beat it. We know how to do it. So the question is, why is the government telling us we're all going to die from Ebola alongside millions of other casualties? Where is this coming from?
I don't know. And I want to see pictures of all these. Now we're hearing some nurses, she's in hospital, a 26-year-old nurse is in hospital. We haven't actually seen, we've seen pictures of this woman with her dog, but we haven't seen these people in the hospital. There have been patients transported to Spain. I saw a video clip of when there are just two people who weren't wearing protective clothing pull up in a military airplane. Then you've got about 5 people in all the white suits, but the people who are inside the plane with this supposed Ebola patient aren't wearing any protective gear at all. But then you've got the big thing with the ambulance turning up and these 5 men in the big white suits and everything else. But the 2 guys are on the plane and getting the trolley out of the plane, which you can't actually see anybody inside this canister thing. Yeah. But they've got no protective gear on at all. Well, I think it's just such a media hype, putting fear amongst everyone. And it's clear it's just for people go and get this vaccine. And all we're hearing is from messages and links that I'm getting said, do not take this vaccine. But then what's going to happen if people don't take the vaccine?
Threats will start.
Yeah.
Emphasise what you say. Picked this one up from the Metro. So here we've got a London hospital. These are the words: thrown into chaos after Ebola patient walks into casualty. What do they have to say? Well, unprepared, panicking staff at Lewisham Hospital allowed the patient to use communal toilets to have visitors, despite the risk of infecting others. So this is what's being claimed. The staff failed to follow correct procedures to deal with a deadly virus despite high-profile NHS drills. So how many people have suffered? And let's remember, it's not complicated. So according to Mr. Hammond, it's not complicated. But here we've got a man supposedly with Ebola, walks into a hospital. They treat him as though he's got a little bit of flu, and nobody's died yet.
It's Lewisham as well. I hope Bill Maloney's keeping safe. I hope he's out and about wearing his white protective suit.
I'm sure he is. So, what's happening in the world of paedophiles?
OK, so yesterday, a 67-year-old man was arrested and held in Dorset of suspicion of historical child abuse investigation surrounding paedophiles in Downing Street. Apparently, it was part of an ongoing inquiry named Operation Brancaster. Now, I've heard Yewtree, I've heard Fernbridge, and then there was another one I've heard of beginning with C, which I can't remember off the top of my head. But this is a whole new name thrown into it. Again, they are also saying it's come out of Simon Danzak's book after he made the awareness, but I haven't heard of Operation Brancaster before. But this 67 apparently was questioned and later released on police bail until November, pending further inquiries. So... well, that's all we've got on it. That's all they're telling us. We don't know who it is. So I suppose the guessing games and trying to figure out who this person is will begin now, I suppose.
But we're not seeing any movement towards any arrest
we haven't heard any
Fernbridge, politicians
Yewtree, no.
So it all goes into a black hole. There's a celebrity, we can arrest him, school teacher, we can arrest him. But the moment it moves towards Westminster, there's a complete silence.
We already know that they're all too big to be arrested and too big to stand accountable for. I mean, we did have Patrick Rock. He was arrested. He was one of Cameron's aides and friends. No more has happened. No more have we heard on the Wolf.
No.
On the Wolf inquiry. So
I think she's getting a bit embarrassed, actually.
I think so. I think they're just giving us little snippets because people are starting to, where is this inquiry? So, let's give them a little bit.
And we've got a bit more of the jigsaw puzzle from this lady here.
Yes, we do. A former detective constable with Greater Manchester Police, her name is Margaret Oliver, told ITV that she handed in a report detailing abuse allegations to senior police officers more than 10 years ago, and that she named the victims and offenders, but there was a lack of desire to investigate, and that she felt forced to resign over the lack of action over the paedophiles within the Greater Manchester area. This echoes what Simon Danzak has said, that police were not effectively taking prosecutions against the accused. And ITV News apparently is saying that Greater Manchester Police are aware of gangs that have been abusing girls over this 10-year period, but these gangs are actually still freely walking the streets of Manchester.
Yeah, and we can give a bit more here, because from the Metro there was some statements. So this lady is saying that she reported it. I wrote a report. So she says about what was going on. It went into my boss and nothing happened. And I can say some years ago I attended a briefing in one of the committee rooms in the Houses of Parliament on the issue of child abuse, and a retired police officer gave a talk and spoke about going around all of the police districts in Britain in order to see what was happening with child abuse. They were shocked at the scale of it. They produced a report. What had happened, that report was locked in a safe. So here we are. There was a lack of desire to investigate, and then the problem spirals out of control. Bosses remained unwilling to take action. Is that actually because they didn't want to take any action? Do you think that's what the case is?
We don't know.
Yeah. Well, here he is. What can you say? The big boss. This is the man taking the accusations at the moment. But wherever we look, it seems impossible for the police to investigate paedophiles. And there was a state here. He said, Sir Peter said, in the past, officers had a mindset that girls claimed to have been abused by paedophiles, but that would always be unreliable. That has changed, but what hasn't is the court system. So he's now blaming it on the CPS. So nothing gets done. He was the problem initially. Now all of a sudden it's the CPS.
Pass the buck.
Pass the buck and destabilise society.
Where are we going? BBC. Okay. The Mail here are claiming that the BBC have 2.2 million in the Children in Need bank account, 900,000 more than last year. They are also claiming that 87.7 million is hidden away in an investment portfolio. The Daily Mail also claimed that 9,000 in fees has gone to fund managers and 893,000 has been made in investment income. In this article, they go on to talk about the investigation over phone votes and donations where lines were actually closed, but customers were still charged, and the proceeds actually went to BBC Worldwide and not to charities. Independent watchdog at the time warned the public not to vote and give money to these charities, and that a lot of the money was swallowed up by the bureaucrats running the charities. Well, this is tell us something we don't know, but it is coming around, and they're doing a big campaign to promote children in need this year. And here we have Old Tell and an array of
celebs. Yeah,
idiots in evening wear trying to promote the old children in need for you to part with your cash.
Everybody is out there for the care of children, raising money to look after children. We've got all of the child protection system. We've got the child protection charities. But when in front of our faces we have thousands of child abuse victims, well, all of a sudden the police don't seem to be able to do anything. Our MPs are absolutely brilliant because their little excuse is, oh, well, the crime didn't take place in my constituency, so I can't help. So that's the standard of British politicians at the moment. Somebody's been murdered. Well, no good coming to me because if it wasn't in my constituency, not my problem. But of course, we've also been looking at other charities and the amount of money they've been handling. Action for Children, one of them, I think with a turnover about £198 million. So children very profitable for care, for fostering, etc. And of course, Core Assets is another very, very big one. And I think they're on a turnover about 138 million. So I think that probably we need a good close look at not only what the public sector is doing to protect children, but what's also going on in the charity sector. And of course, BBC, total hypocrisy. They can raise money for a charity, but they can't deal with the paedophiles in their own...
And they can't even give the money. They can't even give the money. And they can't even report on Melanie correctly.
Well, absolutely correct. So on that subject, we'll bring up that Melanie will be in court tomorrow. This is the Nottingham court list. It's recorded here not before 2 p.m. There was a little bit of confusion because if you see there it says RE-POCA, that's Proceeds of Crime Act, but we understand this is a mistake. We've been told formally it's a mistake in the court listing. So Melanie will be in court tomorrow, and that will, we understand, be a bail application. There we are, just to make sure people know that, because it has already caused some confusion. Well, what more can we say? This is a photograph taken somewhere within the justice system, Ministry of Justice, creating a safe, just and democratic society, except if you're a child abuse victim when you get jailed for 82 days with no evidence. And I just wanted to remind people that we pointed out the Met Police were working with Alison Saunders, head of the Crown Prosecution Service, and Eilish Angelini for a new sort of rape-centred, victim-centred rape review. See how they're getting it right or see how they're getting it wrong. And on the right-hand side of your screen, of course, we've got some of the, I'll call them celebrities for you.
Yeah, right.
Some of the celebrities who are the people responsible for a child abuse victim and whistleblower being jailed for 82 days with, to date, no proper evidence being produced in court. Clearly, this is what David Cameron considers to be a safe, just and democratic society.
Indeed.
And Theresa May, a spokesman from her office, I've forgotten the gentleman's name, but he said that Theresa May will not be asking any questions of the Crown Prosecution Service's handling of the Melanie Shaw case, nor will they be commenting on the case at all, which fits the bill really because it's a child abuse case and Theresa May wouldn't want to get her hands dirty with that, would you, Theresa? And so that we don't forget, because the mainstream papers seem to have, of course, it was the Crown Prosecution Service under Alison Saunders which lost the evidence for another abuse case. They then tried to say that they'd done a really good job by securing all the remaining material, but very delicate video interviews of victims get lost by a mysterious company called Swan Films. Nobody's really heard of Swan Films. Seems to be one man in his lounge, in his garage. So well done there to Alison Saunders. She's obviously got things under control. But here's something really fantastic. This is a little flyer that has been put out in the Manchester area where there's been an appeal to Melanie's neighbours, saying, do you understand where Melanie is? Do you realise she's missing? And apparently there's been a fantastic response to this. Many people in the locality of Melanie's home, of course, didn't know she'd gone. They've spoken very highly of her, a nice lady. And I just think this is absolutely fantastic. This is people starting to do the right thing, which is to get out and say, if we don't look after each other, this is what happens. I'll read this. It's a very emotive little poem by Pastor Martin Niemöller. He said, first they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. And that really said it all, a very poignant wartime poem. If we are to stop what's going on, we have to look after our neighbour. So well done for the people who've started to take some action locally for Melanie Shaw. I've got a series of pretty graphic articles on the police here, which I think are necessary because we're seeing something very, very dark happening across the world, but also in UK. So here is the Express showing anger as 6 Hong Kong police officers beat a handcuffed protester in a dark alley. So the little clip is supposed to show 6 police officers taking somebody into a dark alley to beat them up. Well, my thought on that is, why bother to use a dark alley? Because if you go on the streets of Britain, you can watch police simply do it in the daylight. Yeah. And isn't it remarkable that the Express can report on somebody being beaten up in Hong Kong, but they can't report on a child abuse victim who's been incarcerated with no evidence and treated appallingly in a British prison? So we've got selective reporting by the mainstream, and you've been pointed out quite rightly that you don't have to beat people with sticks, because if it's UK, you can shoot
just
them.
Taser them. Yeah, tasers have been used 10,488 times within 12 months, which the Telegraph are claiming is up 13% on the previous 12 months. Earlier in the year, a police watchdog raised concerns over some police forces' higher rates of taser use. The IPCC did an analysis into tasers and found Staffordshire had the highest number of incidents with 33, compared to London and Diffid that only had just 2. So I wonder what it is about Staffordshire. They are currently investigating why 2 teenagers with severe learning difficulties were tasered and stunned by police in Plymouth.
Yeah. And something which we can say, we have reported on this before, but on the internet, if you go looking for tasers safety, also put in Birmingham Heartlands Hospital, you should find a PDF report where a doctor was paid in order to write a report on the safety of tasers. And of course, he said they were safe, except in a number of cases where the bolt hit people in the groin, or they had a pacemaker, or they had some form of heart problems. So there was a whole range of caveats which actually said these weapons are extremely dangerous, but we're now starting to see tasers used in their thousands as if it's a toy water pistol or something. So very serious stuff.
Hang on, there's some breaking news. Odin, can you get in touch and let us know more? Breaking news: Glastonbury Town Hall has been taken over. I don't know what
I know a little. I do know a little bit about this, and we'll add it towards the end of the programme. So
right,
yes,
okay.
Thank you for that alert there. Now this is a particularly distressing photograph from the Mail. This is a Chinese lady stripped naked and beaten senseless on the street. Now, if the Mail is to be believed, this is an increasing culture of vigilante action in China. I see this picture, it reminds me of some particularly vile actions taken during the Second World War by the Nazis. But I just wanted to say, let's not forget, of course, that it's David Cameron that has consistently been praising everything to do with China, saying that we should be embracing Chinese companies into UK, build our nuclear infrastructure. And the BBC article here, if you read it, is about David Cameron going to China in order to improve relations. So my prediction is we won't see David Cameron speaking out about this particularly vile abuse on the streets in China. And where does this head? Well, we've got a little clue from an article that is, I believe I saw part of this some time ago, but the person who sent this in to us has said, have a read of Paul Craig Roberts. And this is a story about a family being raided by an American SWAT team that kicked their way into the house at night, threw in a stun grenade, which landed in the baby's cot. Wrong house, no drugs anyway. But the point of the article is that the police have basically said, oh, we made a mistake, sure. We're sorry. And
no one standing accountable for it. No.
Well, the family will have to expend the money on all of the hospital bills in order to get this little baby some form of quality of life. So it's happening in America, it's happening here in Britain. There's an underlying, very unpleasant political ideology. It's police state brutality. And here the man in charge is David Cameron, of course, ably assisted by Theresa May. And if you stand up to be counted, maybe you're at risk.
Right, OK. So here's a slide, if we put that up, dating back to July the 24th, 2013. And it's warning activists and people within the alternative media to be careful after Luke Radzowski from We Are Change, I remember this incident really clearly, was sent a malicious email with attachments to child porn. Luckily, Luke was brave enough, he read through it, and he didn't open the email. The attacker warned Luke that they planned to set him up with child porn along with every other person in the alternative media. In this article, they say that Stuart Rhodes from Oath Keepers and Dan Johnson from People Against the NDAA say that they were also targeted with having child porn installed on their computers. The final paragraph of this article says that it is a warning to all activists to be extra vigilant as the establishment attempts to discredit and imprison those who seek the truth. Now, the question I need to ask is, could this be the case for none other than UK's very own Chris Spivey? Can we put that slide back up?
Just missed that.
OK, Chris was on our show last week, mine and Danielle's late night show, No Hold Barred. I actually got cut off halfway through the broadcast and I couldn't get back on. We'd only discussed what got him into doing his writing and some other issues of stories he's covered. We never got onto his arrest, but Danielle continued on with the show. Chris said he was writing a blog about his arrest and what had happened. Here he is pictured with his daughter, Stacey, who she came on the air as well, and her son, Tegan. Now, I urge people to go and read. Chris is going to be on the show here tomorrow to discuss what's going on and what happened to him and the things that they're trying to put on him. But before he comes on, I just ask viewers and listeners to read this post from October the 10th. It's called Scandal. And if you go onto chrisspivey.org, you can read all about the first arrest that was done on the 30th of July, and then the most recent arrest, the computers that were taken and the equipment that was taken from Chris's house. So he will be on tomorrow. He's going to discuss his case. I'm going to let it come from his words. So I'm not going to say too much, but I am urging people to read that article. And as we say, Chris Spivey will be on this show tomorrow. And there's been a lot of support. There's also been a lot of trolls out there after him, putting some revolting things up. But we're going to let Chris tell his story and let you guys make up your own minds. Okay.
We live in troubled times, isn't it?
Indeed.
That's the minimum you could say.
And we really are in trouble if this person's making headlines. Okay, so this man descended on Wall Street with 200 Occupy protests yesterday, and I'm pretty sure Occupy is part of Soros, but we,
Open Society.
Open Society, yeah. But apparently this was a promotional stunt to promote his new book, Revolution. Brand gave a talk on the need for a social and economic revolution. He went on to praise Occupy Wall Street protesters, saying it brought hope to people and it showed him that revolution isn't something that belongs to the past, but something that belongs to the future. So he's on Wall Street protesting about the amount of money there is. So I thought, let's just have a little reminder of this guy's net worth. There he is, $15 million. And that's before the release of this book. He's just recently, well, a while back, divorced from Katy Perry. Somebody said he might have split from this Jemima Khan E. Goldsmith, links to Rothschild, but I can't guarantee that. I'll have to have a little more look into it. But I mean, all this coming from a man worth this amount of money and in relationships with the Rothschild family, I think it's pretty disgraceful.
And
have a look at this quote that he uses. And how many times in one paragraph can you use change? I know, I'm rich, I'm famous, I have money, I've had private security on and off for years. There is no doubt that I, as much as anyone else, have to change. Revolution is change. I believe in change, personal change, most of all. Know too that I have seen what fame and fortune have to offer, and I know it's not the answer. Of course, I have to change as an individual, and part of this will be sharing wealth, though without a systematic change, and this will be sweet, futile gesture.
So
isn't he vile?
There is the word. And revolution, what does revolution bring? It brings
violence.
Absolute destruction, violence, wrecks society. And I think what Mr. Brand is doing is nudging in the idea of change. But yeah, where's it heading? Revolution. Constant change is revolution. And of course, that is what we're seeing. And both David Cameron's Conservatives and Miliband's Labour, with little Nick Clegg in the background, of course, supporting Marxist Saul Alinsky doctrine within their respective political manifestos. So we don't need to make it up. We see at the moment the country has been broken apart. Now, probably that's a good time to mention, we will give a full report on this tomorrow, but we understand that local people in Glastonbury decided to really take the battle to the establishment. So they were in I think it's the council chambers, challenging the council on everything that they are connected to. So we have the undermining of common law, we have the ignoring of our constitution and constitutional rights, and of course we have the total fraud out of money created from nothing. All of the local officials in the Glastonbury area, I understand, have been informed of what's going on, and they were then told to actually sort it out. So
John Galloway's just actually posted, he's been told a group have taken over Glastonbury Town Hall under Article 61 of Magna Carta with the blessings of Duke of Rutland.
Okay. So we will give you a full report on that tomorrow. What I do know is that everything that's been done has been done peaceably, which is peacefully, which is a very, very important thing. But we are getting to the stage where people say it's no good sitting and sending an email. We need to actually get in the faces of the individuals controlling things. So before we give you a reminder on the conference, I'll just say the good news is that the UK column is being published as we speak. So a new edition of the UK column will be available in the next few days. And it's particularly targeted to dovetail in with the conference, which we should be able to bring up on screen. So here's the health part, which is actually Sunday.
I've actually got Graham Dowing on my Monday show talking about that, and he's going to be on next week's No Holds Barred as well. So it should be interesting.
All right, that's excellent. And what are we seeking to do? Well, we're going to be looking at what is happening, what the actual causes are, and then, of course, what we can do to stop this blatant destruction of our nation, society, families. Yeah, you just look at the politicians, though, don't you? They all appear to be squeaky clean, but the reality is a very, very dark bunch of people. Criminality, lies, cheating, selfies in paisley pyjamas, very popular at the moment.
Or underpants.
Underpants. And what are they really hiding? The wide-scale abuse of children. So something needs to be done to clean up Parliament. And if they're successful in reducing freedoms further with more EU legislation in November, we're going to be in a very serious situation unless we act. So
T-shirts, bumper stickers, leaflets, all available from carol@ukcolumn.org. There are places, I think there's still rooms left at the hotel, but I think you have to go via the website, don't you, to book it. Because otherwise the hotel, if you phone the hotel directly, they will say the rooms are booked because we have them being reserved. That's it.
Brilliant.
Back tomorrow, 1 o'clock.
Thanks for joining us.
Cheers,
Bye-bye.
bye.